Well, hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of Pivot Poker. I'm your host, Matt. I'm the founder of Pivot Studios. Have a really great guest for you guys today. Been a friend of mine for a while now, has a great new game coming out called Two-Hand Hold'em. Really excited to introduce Wayne, poker professional, Blackjack professional as well, has some stories that he's going to share with that. But without further ado, Wayne, really excited to have you on and the first guest here, man.
Glad to be here, Matt.
Yeah. We'll start out with just a little bit about you real quick, a little bit about maybe your poker kind of A to Z. I know you work with Bally right now. You're live, you work with them for Live on the Bike, which is a great show. You guys host tournaments. So maybe just kind of give everyone an update of what's been new over the past few months here.
Yeah, so currently the Live of the Bike owners, Evelyn Tillard, Brian Arakaki, JD Lagars, and myself, we sold it to Bally's, and then it's now corporate. So that's been a challenge because corporate's rigid and they need things done a certain way. The way poker streams work, it's very fluid. So, people cancel, they're asking for scheduling far in advance or even a week in advance. And it doesn't work like that because players, depending whether they lose or win, that jurisdicts whether they play the next day, the next week, so on and so on. Because, they don't have money or they don't feel like playing, et cetera, et cetera.
And so when you're getting these players that are kind of coming on and things of that nature, like what are you looking for? Is it more, obviously you want to get people with probably with a social following, but when you're inviting these players, we kind of talked a little bit before recording for people in poker, to show that you've really been in poker, you should be in it for at least 10 years. So these people that you're picking, like how do you find that? And, someone that's maybe up and coming in poker, how do they kind of get into something like that?
So poker shows and producing poker shows is fairly different from normal TV shows, because normal TV shows and movies, they pay, staff and the people showing up. So poker media worked for a long time because the people wanted to play on camera, like they had an incentive to, like they're an influencer, or they just want a good game. Because public games have gotten incredibly difficult, and because it's just like a bunch of predatory professional poker players. I used to be one of them. And then a bunch of people you kind of survey all the potential players, which is what are your lineup requirements? Because the problem is in a poker stream, nobody wants to be the worst player or the second worst player or the third worst player, or at some point, they want to be able to look across the table and be like, okay, I'm at least better than, X amount of these people at the table. So that's the difficulty. And then of course, they know it's a show, so if they see a professional poker player with a high following or draws viewership, they know why they're there. If there's a professional poker player that doesn't draw viewership, then it's like, why is that person there? And that's basically the fundamentals that I try to communicate. And when people don't believe me or don't listen, I'm like, okay, go ahead, try.
Right.
Everyone has to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like, I think I talked about this one of the previous times. It's just like being a brain surgeon. It's like, if I look at your face, can I do brain surgery? No, there's a lot more going on that it's not on the outside.
Definitely. Well, that's really interesting. And so kind of switching gears to the other half of poker, which I know you have a lot of experience in, kind of that online side of poker. I know you did a lot kind of back in maybe the earlier 2000s with that. So I'd kind of be curious to hear your experience with that and maybe what you think kind of the current state of online poker is, in your opinion.
I started live poker first. So I was a Generation 1 esports professional computer game player. And then after the .com crash, I kind of had to make decisions on what to do. And I went back to school. It's for myself, but it's also for my parents. And then I got into an argument with my dad about, spending. They're immigrants from Taiwan, so they're very frugal, and rightfully so. And my dad had issues where I was spending money because I had to buy pizza. They're like, that's really expensive. And it's like, if I want pizza, I want pizza.
Yeah.
So that's when, it's a good thing because that prompted me for financial independence because I didn't want to hear it. And then I started playing the live casinos there in Siquan, Verona, and Viejas in San Diego. And then when online poker came out, the first site was Paradise Poker. Don't remember the year. It's got to be 2002 or 2003. So, I would seesaw back and forth because at that time I'm in like year one. And the thing is, in that era, things were a lot easier, but there wasn't as much information on how to play poker well. There's only this romanticized fantasy of like staring at somebody and just like soul reading them. But there's a lot of math. And back then, there weren't the solvers that there are today. There was a site called twodimes.net. I think it still exists. That was the original like online math solver. You could just input whatever hands are against each other and then just kind of figure out the math. And now it's, a lot prettier, like cardplayer.com has like a prettier version with a better UI UX. After the Chris Moneymaker boom, it's up until the Chris Moneymaker boom, I think like the WPT had a lot of tournaments and the advent of being able to see their whole cards, which that was the big thing that kind of skyrocketed poker, because poker media is about the viewer seeing what's on the screen and thinking, I am as good, if not better, than who I see.
Right.
So when you see big names like Phil Hellmuth, Daniel Negreanu, Phil Ivey, Antonio Spendiari, Phil Locke, and you see what they're doing, poker is incredibly deceptive. All card games are deceptive. You don't really know what skills going on in here as the performance is going down. You basically only get to see the results. And in poker, you get to see like a lot of variance. So if things work out or don't work in your favor, if it's on camera, you see the small sample size, but in the viewer's mind, you think it's like this big when it's actually not that significant. The big difference with online poker versus live poker is online you could play like many different tables. And we're human, and a lot of us have ADHD.
Yeah.
So we want to keep doing things because live, you're just folding, and then when you get bored, you start playing hands and you play too loose and then you lose. So online, you have this thing where I think there was a 4-table cap, and then Party Poker had an 8-table cap, and Party Poker had a skin called Eurobet. So then you could 16-table. So there's a lot of bonuses and rake back. So on top of theoretically winning, you get all these side bonuses, and it just greatly exceeded a normal job. At UC San Diego, I was drawing comics for $9.80 an hour.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was very generous of them, the UCSD Guardian. But the problem is, Ralph's sandwiches, the one in La Jolla by the campus, the sandwiches were like $4.99. And then a year later, they became $5.99. God knows what it is now. But
Right.
I'm just looking right in front of me. I'm like, all right, well, if the sandwich is getting $1 more expensive per meal, then every day it just like compounds. So I just, had to try to make things happen. And then after the Moneymaker boom, that's when things just got wild.
Yeah. And when you say wild, that's pretty much like just what you're, playing all the different tables, those solvers, like you said, it's just the technology you're able to use in the background, right? It's just
that time solvers hadn't been out. They're called, the software that was out were called HUDs, HUD, heads up displays. So the very first one was called Poker Tracker, and now there's Hold'em Manager. Now there's solvers like Pio Solver and Snowy and a ton of stuff. But back then, it's just like if I'm playing against you, the heads up display mines your data.
right.
And then I get to see how loose you're playing, like the percentages. And from the percentages, I can guess what hands you're playing pre-flop. Say like the worst hand you play is Jack 10 offsuit and pocket fours, for example. And if I know that that's your range in this position, it makes it very easy for me. I don't want to say easy.
Yeah.
It gives me hints on how to do a counter strategy, because if you're playing that loose, you don't like ace high boards. You don't like king high boards. So if I keep stabbing those boards, one, if you fold, I have a chance, and I have nothing, I have a chance to see 2 more cards. Or if you do have something, now you're potentially paying me off if I have a hand. So those are these like small, simple things that software allows you to figure things out. And back in the day, one of the big stats was win percent at showdown.
Yeah.
So one of the romanticized things in poker is bluffing. So if your win percent at showdown is low, you're bluffing too much or you're calling too light.
Right.
So those are the players that you want to play against.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if your win percent of showdown is too high, it means you're playing too tight. You're getting bluffed out, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to find, you use all these numbers and just kind of figure out the frequency and the rate that you should be calling, bluffing, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot of trial and error. Nobody's born knowing everything. So you just have to that was such a huge thing for party poker and Poker Stars and Full Tilt is these HUDs just gave you like a huge advantage over people not using them.
Wow, and that's wild because I think that's how, from what I've seen with my friends that play, most of them got started with the online and they were showing me all just the crazy stuff they can do. But just one thing kind of going off of that, people getting started or people just starting to learn was, I know it's probably there wasn't one thing, but was there a sort of maybe a mindset shift or a strategy shift that like really clicked it for you? Like, okay, this is how I should be playing poker.
There was a forum called 2+2. It's still around, but it's not, the cool kids that it used to be, so to say.
Right.
People would go on there, and there's like a lot of names that you still see today. Like Garrett Adelstein used to be on there a lot, like Phil Galfond, Doug Polk, in different eras. Mm-hmm. But that was kind of like the cool kids pro community. So if you talked and played like them, you were most likely a winning player. That was mostly true because the games were the games were easier back then.
Right.
And at some point, like, that's just not enough. Like, as players get better, there's less money to be won. So you just have to get better and better until something like Nash Equilibrium happens and everyone isn't really winning that much, or they're losing in a small rate because the rake, and then you just kind of have to figure out what to do with these skill sets. The Moneymaker boom, when Chris Moneymaker won the World Series of Poker, that narrative, which we now realize potentially would have happened eventually, when somebody plays an $11 satellite, wins that, parlays that, wins the next one, and then all of a sudden wins the World Series main event.
Yeah.
When you have the camera pointing at this person, you think, oh my gosh, I could be the one.
Right.
when in actuality, there was a lot of people who entered those satellites, busted those, and then several people won that 10K World Series of Poker main event entry and busted those. So the camera in post-production is just following the winner, and then, luckily for the camera, he happened to do well against incredibly famous players like Phil Ivey, Doyle Brunson, and then Johnny Chan. And then in the final heads-up match, he was against Sammy Farha, who was, a cigar smoking, charming, old school pro. And when Chris Moneymaker bluffed him, I don't remember what Sammy Farha had, but he bluffed him one hand by moving all in. That was just the turning point. That's the little turning point on TV where the viewer's like, I could do that too.
Yeah, holy crap, I could be in that seat. Yeah.
I can be in that seat. I can bluff out this supposed pro.
Yeah.
And then the very final hand, Chris Moneymaker gets lucky and flops 2-pair against Sammy Farha's on top pair, and Sammy Farha doesn't fold. And then the rest is history. Chris Moneymaker could have been outdrawn too. But the whole thing is, when the run out happens like this and the camera is able to just like retell the meat of the story, and from the hands that were shown, Chris Moneymaker didn't play really poorly. I think there's one hand he cold called 3 with like 4 or 5 offsuit, but everything else he was basically just dealt the winning hand.
Right.
And again, that helps too, because as the viewer, you're like, oh, I just need to be dealt the winning hand, or, play well enough. It just, before, like most other competitions, especially sports, where there's not that much variance, you think like, I can never beat a pro. But it's in the individual hand in poker, you can easily beat a pro. You could dealt the winning hand, or, you could bluff them out. So that kind of humanized these poker pros in that era, obviously with the help of the camera.
Yeah.
So then that basically spun off into this huge boom where people watching the World Series of Poker and WPT and think that they're closer to being a pro than they actually are. An influx of money comes in, and people who were money hungry and passionate about the game, like myself back then, we may not be like the top, but what you figure out in poker is you could be winning along the way as you get better and increasing stakes. And then you need to have the maturity to kind of stop or even move down from what your optimal stakes should be, because just because you're beating something like 1020 no limit online, a lot of people couldn't stomach losing. So right. 1020 no limit online, we're buying in 100 big blinds, 2,000. Some people short buy, but for the sake of the argument, we're going to talk about $2,000 buy-ins. So if you have $20,000, that's 10 buy-ins. That's not a lot. So you could easily you could have kings and I could have aces, or you could have ace king, I got pocket queens. We just run it. And you just lose 10 buy-ins like very quickly.
Yeah.
And if you don't step down stakes, or you're not good enough, or just you chase your losses, you're just done for. And that's a very common thing. And that ended like a lot of people. It ends people today in online and live situations. So that's kind of the first thing that you have to learn and stomach is bankroll management. There's Kelly Criterion is a good source for bankroll growth. But the thing is, that's also for if you're purely gambling for a living.
Right.
What people have found, including myself, is that you want to have a hybrid of like stable income and then leave poker as a completely separate income.
Yeah.
Before, you had the ability to have more of it in poker and less of it in stable. Now, especially with inflation, the scarcity of the games, I think you need to have more in the stable and be fairly conservative with the variable side.
Yeah, I think that really will help a lot, especially for the newcoming players here. And one thing though, I did want to just say is you talked about how, the kind of the Chris Moneymaker and how it's like, hey, I could be at that table. Yeah. You were able to get at those tables. I mean,
Garrett Adelstein.
Yeah, Garrett, and then Doug Polk as well. Talk to me about some of those experiences. I mean, playing against probably, mentors, guys you looked up to. What was that like?
So the first guys I looked up to in the generation were like Phil Locke, Antonio Sfindiari. Antonio Sfindiari and I are actually from the same area, like Northern California, San Jose.
Yeah.
So when I first played against them, it was really intimidating. Clearly, they knew a lot more than I did. And they're buying in for like $20,000 plus at the 1020 table. And I'm playing $2,000 because that's what I'm used to, like online. Or actually, it wasn't that. Anyway, I was buying in 100 big blinds for 1020. And clearly, they all knew more and had different strengths. But what you can't accomplish in live poker is having a large sample size and getting enough data to confirm how good you are and if you're actually the winning player in this environment, because there's so much variance. So this is what online really helped people like me and a bunch of other people like Phil Galfond, Garrett Adelstein, and Doug Polk, is we're able to get a very large sample size. I probably have 3 million hands online, and that's not even high right now because I'm not like a pure pro. But during the eras I was active, I was pretty high up there with the hands. So with that, and you have one of my global poker graphs is evidence that I'm a theoretical winner. But that's just my skill and in this player pool. As the player pool gets tougher, like Doug Polk in his prime was the best heads-up player in the world. Garrett Adelstein was arguably the best heads-up player at Commerce Casino in certain eras, and also online in certain eras. That can change so quickly. Case in point, there was a story about Tom Dwan and the third challenge. So he challenged everybody, and he just said, I will put, I hope I don't get this wrong, my 1.5 million against your $500,000. If I win, you owe me 500K. If you win, I owe you 1.5 million. So famously and infamously, he beat Patrick Antonius, and then he never finished his match with Jungle Man, and a ton of people were, piled on to play him. Was Tom Dwan the best? In certain eras, arguably yes. And then, these things can change really quickly because you have groups of people studying you and analyzing your numbers and then just like facing you. And it was a really interesting phenomenon. So me and Garrett Adelstein are of the same generation. We played 10-20 no limit on Party Poker. First of all, I started with Limit Hold'em. So then in the heyday for Limit Hold'em was Party Poker, 8 tables of 1530, in which 8 of them were on Party Poker and 8 of them were on Eurobet. There were probably some other skins I'm not thinking of. And then Sit and Goes came out. There's No Limit Hold'em Sit and Goes, the 218s. I did really well in those. I think Garrett also mentioned he did really well in those. And overnight, the games got tougher. So there was a couple phenomena happen. One, the expendable income probably just got torched. 2, a book by Dan Harrington. In fact, there's probably 2 books came out. It just taught people how to resource manage better. So the thing about being good at poker, it's not just about you. It's about how bad your opponents are. And people use bad like way too liberally. Because if you only play aces, kings, queens, and ace king, you're probably losing against me, but you're not losing that much. So that's kind of what Dan Harrington's book did for the population at that time. It's just taught people how to play more snug. And that caused like a chain reaction. So the 218 sit and go single table tournaments weren't as juicy. And then, I took the leap into cash games, and, Garrett and many other people did. The 10-20 no limit on Party Poker, I did well. Garrett did much better than me, I'm sure. My turning point there was finding a site called Hollywood Poker. And that was a skin for, I don't remember the original one, but Daniel Negreanu's Full Contact Poker was also a skin on there. So we were all playing in a certain pool. And this is something that I inadvertently was ahead of the curve. Some people were way more ahead of the curve than me because these side sites were a lot easier to beat up on players than the main sites. Mm-hmm. Like the main sites were Party Poker, Poker Stars, and Full Tilt. And then these side sites, the issue is they potentially weren't as trustworthy. Like I heard Pacific Poker was one of them. So you could win at heaps, and then if you try to cash out, no money.
How would they cash out? Would it be crypto, or is it straight to your checking? Okay.
This is way before crypto. This is way before Bitcoin even existed. So there's a site called NetTeller.
Okay.
And when we won, I would aggressively cash out to NetTeller and send to the bank because in 2006, I think the 2+2 forums got wind that NetTeller was going to go down.
Yeah.
So people who didn't heed those warnings had their money stuck on NetTeller or unable to get them from the online sites to their bank account. After NetTeller went down, we got direct checks. Yeah, at that time, I don't know why I didn't do direct deposit. On Hollywood Poker, I just aggressively cashed everything out to NetTeller and aggressively cashed it out to my bank. And at that time, when NetTeller went down, I think Hollywood Poker and Full Contact, whatever, they all went down at a very similar time. So then I switched over to Full Tilt. But that, just playing on the non-main sites, it taught me that it's easier. Like I was doing well on Party Poker, but I was doing way better on Hollywood Poker.
Right.
And, like people like Daniel Negreanu were on there, and he was playing. He had some matches with like Dream Clown and like Limit Hold'em, like 300, 600. And then I played with him 50, 100, like 2 times, no limit. But he wasn't on there that often. But anyway, that was kind of like literally the golden age of poker, where you didn't have to be the best. You just have to find these like nice pools and like learn the lesson to not go overboard. Like a lot of poker is about your self-control, not losing control yourself versus your own like personal skill. If like I were to set up a match with a highly technical skilled person, like, you know, Tom Dwan, Jungle Man, or Garrett, like, yeah, you lock us in a room, I probably lose.
Yeah.
But that's not the situation that we're in. We have the ability, like, if somebody wants to play me and I don't want to, just sit out.
Right, yeah.
So that's what happened with Doug Polk on Poker Stars is him and his students, they would just like lobby the entire heads up room and people would just, you know, challenge. And if you don't get any action, you know, Doug Polk states he's potentially the best player in that era because nobody's willing to play it and he's willing to play anyway. But that's the thing is like poker doesn't really have these achievements. You win the World Series main event doesn't mean you're the best player. Like, you know, all you have are these graphs or like lobbying. And, you know, Garrett used to lobby the Commerce Casino and just like, it would just be these like 5 to 10 people and like just, you know, until nobody would play each other.
Right.
And that's basically all you have are stories and legends of these situations. You know, like if you were there, people either they saw you or they know your screen name or just the way that you carry yourself, you know, they could tell like what your background is. And for the people who went through, it's like very obvious. And you know who's been through the gauntlet when they are just scared.
Yeah.
Like when they're playing big, they're like, who's playing? Like, you know, and just like, what's the environment? Like, am I going to get cheated? Like, all these things. And, you know, Garrett, Doug Polk, and myself, Doug and Garrett more publicly have talked about being cheated and how they respond to these situations. Myself, I don't have proof, but I'm just like, this doesn't seem right.
Right.
Out button.
Yep.
So, and that stings with you. You know, there's one also, a violation of rules. Like I was in a big hand with Mark Newhouse and Chino Ream was like standing behind and then Mark Newhouse was about to fold and then Chino's like, you can't fold to Wayne. And then Mark is like, all right, you're right. Ends up calling it. And then everybody at the table's like, that's so wrong.
Right.
It's like, too bad. Like it just happened and the floor isn't going to do anything.
Yep.
It's nice to hear the acknowledgement, but that's one of the things in high stakes poker you need to realize it's like it's not all going to be fair, fun, and games. In fact, like one of my coworkers now is also a house player, totally trustworthy. But when it comes to the blinds and we chop, I still grip my cards and wait for the other guy, wait for him, and he's like, Wayne, you don't trust me. Like, I'm like, I'm sorry, it's like the trauma from high stakes poker, and he's like, I'm not going to cheat you. I'm like, I know you're not, but you just develop these habits. And it is what it is. Like, that's why it's one of the many things where you could just like watch somebody how they operate and know they've gone through the gauntlet.
And so is it kind of just, it is what it is in poker as far as, like you said, you know, the floor is not going to do anything. Like, is there any point where someone steps in or you could get banned from tournaments? Like there is a certain point, right? I would assume.
You can get banned from the casino. Like right now there's an argument. Cheaters like don't get banned from tournaments. Part of it is like, the tournaments need to hit a guarantee, and also where's the proof and policing of the cheating? It's like it's so nebulous, and as an operator, nobody has time to like police like everything.
Right, of course.
And the thing is, as we know in America, it's like innocent until proven guilty. So you could have immense suspicion, immense like proof to professional poker players or regular poker players that it's cheating, and then in the court of law, they're like, I don't, no idea. So that's kind of what happened with the Mike Postle case, and you know, for that matter, several other cases on stream poker that may or may not have more light on the situation. And it's the same thing. On the Hustler Casino Live Jack 4 incident against Garrett Adelstein, it's like, you play poker a long time, you're like, this does not look right, yet there's some percentage of people that think they're cheating and there's another percent that don't. And everything is reasonable. Like all the explanations for both are reasonable. And it's like, I mean, until you have like the hard proof, and especially what the court of law would deem as sufficient enough proof, it's not gonna fly.
Yeah, makes sense. And yeah, all makes sense there. But yeah, really great insight though, because I haven't really, there's cheating everywhere. So it's just interesting. But one more question, then I want to play some two-hand hold'em with you as well, so our audience can take a look at that. But kind of one last question to kind of wrap up to maybe some of those newer players out there. You mentioned two things already, which is, understanding your bankroll, taking care of your bankroll. And then number two, understanding your skill level, understanding the room that you're walking into. Is there maybe one more thing that for a new player, just say, hey, like, for example, learn how to bluff, which I know is not what you're going to say, but something along the lines of those are the top two, maybe one more thing that, what it really takes to be great, quote unquote, at poker?
Two things. One, you're your own worst enemy. So look, if you're playing poker, you've probably played a really, really long session, long past, the amount of time you should be playing.
Right.
My longest session's probably 48 hours in which
that's insane.
Technically stopped, and I'm like, I go back to the room in Vegas and I'm like, I'm bored. So I go back down, and that's how they get you, because that won't happen in LA.
Right.
But it's you against yourself. You have to just play when you have energy, you're mentally clear. If you're losing, the problem with professional poker too is like when you're losing, you want to chase back the losses, but you're also not in the best mental state to be playing.
Yep.
And everybody underrates how badly being emotionally compromised can affect you. The thing is, like, when I went broke, like, I wasn't playing poorly, so to say, but I was telegraphing, my strategy, more just the way I was carrying myself in my face. So, and then the other one is underestimating your opponent, because you don't know what other people have studied and what they're capable of, because we're all different. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. And in the high stakes, there's almost like a rock, paper, scissors element where it's not like who's objectively better. It's like, oh, this person takes advantage of this person, takes advantage of this person, and it goes like circular. So that's like a phenomenon that it's not totally like that, but there's some semblance like that of what that's like. So those are two
great
things.
No, that's perfect. I know that'll help out our viewers a lot. So appreciate you sharing that. I've even learned a thing or two for my next game. Real quick though, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to share with our viewers your latest project, kind of what you've been working on, and pretty much your baby that you've been getting into casinos. So really excited. As I pull this up, do you want to kind of maybe give the viewers a little overview of two-hand hold'em, what it is, and how that's been?
So two-hand hold'em is a casino table game that piggybacks off the original game, Texas Hold'em. You're dealt 4 cards, and then you see a flop, and then you have to split your 4 cards into 2 sets of 2 whole cards. And if you like your hand according to the flop, you can raise it, and then the dealer deals turn and river, and then it's your 4 cards against your opponent's 3. Oh yeah, there's my baby.
Cool. There she is. Well, nice. Well, yeah, so that's pretty good. So we'll put the link up if people want to try this. This is you put in the website here and you can play this just to see what it's like. But yeah, real quick. So you kind of overviewed it a little bit. So essentially, first things first, you put in your bet for 2
equal
hands.
units. Yes.
Equal units. Got it. So I'll put 5
antes / blinds. Yeah.
Got it. Cool. And then we'll press deal.
This is the flop. These is the community cards.
Got it. Cool.
And then our 4 cards, we split them into 2 different hands, however we want. Now we have 3 of a kind 4s. That's really nice.
Yep.
So first thing we're going to put our 4 on, one side, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Cool.
And then you want to kind of balance your weaker hand. It's always going to be exciting to have a strong hand, but you want to figure out what to do with the weaker hand too. So in this case, because the 5 isn't that coordinated with the 10 or 9, I think you put the 5 with the 4.
Right. That's
and then and then raise the 5-4 and do not raise the 10-9 suited.
Oh, so when you raise, you can raise for only one
2x.
hand if you like. Got it.
You could check both. You could raise one or you could raise both.
Got it. Cool. Awesome. So we'll raise that. And then after that, our job is essentially done and we just deal and see what happens, right?
Turn the river, and then you can hand 1 place against the house and hand 2 plays against the house. So there we go. You won 2 units. The dealer had a pair of 6s. So the left hand would have won if a 9 or 10 comes out.
Right.
So it wasn't drawing dead. It just happens to be unlucky in this specific case.
Nice. We'll go again. Let's see here. We'll up it to, let's see,
100,000 high roller.
We'll do 100,000, man. It's a Saturday night. I'm feeling crazy. All right, deal it out. Oh wow. Oh wow. So we're getting good. So
this is really a really good hand.
So initially, I would want to go. You'd say 3 of a kind always, right? So put the 2 kings in one hand, or was that?
But actually, if your pairs are like jacks or better, you can actually split the pairs. So make king 3 of clubs, especially since there's a club draw there.
Yeah.
So the advanced play is actually put king 3 on one side and king jack on the other.
Okay.
And then raise.
Got it, because then you at least have a pair on both sides.
Yeah, but this is a very specific case. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
The raise, yeah.
And then we'll see. Boom.
There you go. See, you won 6.
We just, wow.
Yeah, you won 6 units. Because your jacks, like, if your pair was like, if you had 3 8s and then you split your 8s, then you would have both lost the pair of jacks. But you have kings. Yeah. So you split the kings and now both kings beat the jacks.
Awesome. We'll do one more hand real quick and then we'll get you out of here. I know we're kind of running on 40 minutes, but I just won 600,000, so I'm gonna spend some money on here.
This is playable at Maverick Gaming's Great American Casino in Tukwila, Washington State.
Love it.
It's in between Seattle and Tacoma.
Cool. Yeah. And if anyone's interested, we'll have all this information. We'll have the link. We'll have Wayne's LinkedIn. We'll have the casino that it's in. We'll have all that in the description. So if any of our viewers are
bonuses.
Yes.
So many bonuses. Yeah.
Love it. Cool. All right. Well, last hand. Let's see if we can get something. So.
All right. You tell me. I know what to do.
I would say you put the ace with the 3, right? And you put the king and queen together. Or what would you do? Yeah.
That is correct, but this is a very complicated hand because the pair of 3s and king queen high are almost the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes, against each other, the pair of 3s win, but king high is basically like a pair of 3s and a pair of 2s.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, that is a couple. I had to think about that one for a second. Would you raise on this, or would you raise the ace?
Definitely. Anything jacks or better is almost always a raise.
Okay. Well, we won 600K. We're raising both hands. We'll see what happens. All right.
Jack.
All right, push. So we made it even.
Push.
So we're up about a little over 600K with that 10K one before. So that was great. Well, I love that. I mean, I've played that before. I know a lot of my colleagues have played it as well and really love it. But yeah, guys, be sure to check that out online. Be sure to check out all of our socials. If you follow Pivot Studios, we retweet a lot of the 2-hand hold'em stuff and all those updates. So be sure to look out for that. But other than that, Wayne, man, you've given us so much. I really appreciate you just breaking down a little bit of your history, a little bit how to play poker. Kind of anything you want to plug, anything you want to say before we kind of head out here?
Yeah, just try 2-hand hold'em with Play Money. It's free. PLAY, the number 2HH.com. And then, yeah, just try it out. And it's available in Washington State right now. And there's a lot of bonuses. Like Great American Casino gives you $300 free at match play, and every hour they give you $25. There's also, if you bring somebody, you get like 10% of like whatever they're playing. There's a lot of stuff.
Nice.
So yeah, check them out. I'll email you all the bonuses. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, be sure to share all that with our audience. And again, Wayne, thanks so much for joining. First guest of Pivot Poker. And yeah, well, I'm sure we'll have you on again. And yeah, be sure to stay out on our socials, guys. We'll be retweeting all their stuff. So again, thank you, Wayne, and appreciate all you've done.
All right, sounds good. Take it easy.